All right, well, hello, seventh graders. We are continuing right along here in this idea of circles. This is getting us in now into chapter 9. Today we're going to be dealing with diameter, radius, circumference. And the first couple terms I want you to be aware of course, all the circles that we see today, we're going to imagine that are totally perfect. We have what we call the radius of the circle, which is the distance from the edge all the way to the middle. So this is what we would call a radius, plural radii. Now, if we go all the way across, like that dotted line there, when we go from edge to edge, as long as we go through the middle, that is what we call a diameter. So when we talk about circles, these are two terms you need to know. Radius, which is the distance from the edge of a circle to the middle, and that's an example right there. This also would be an example of a radius. And then a diameter going from one side of the circle to the other as long as you go through the middle. Like from here to here, that's what we would call a chord. That's not a word that you need to know. That's just some extra information. But this is not a diameter right here, because a diameter does not go through the middle. A diameter has to go through the middle like this. Or if I wanted to start one here, and I used a dotted line, that right there would be a diameter. So you get the idea of what that needs to be. Radius, half the distance, diameter, all the way. Now, how does that apply with what we're doing today? Well, your first set of directions says to find the radius. Now, I know the diameter. That's what this is. From the top of the circle to the bottom all the way across, that's 7 centimeters. So if I know that the diameter is from one end of the circle to the other end of the circle, going through the middle, if that's the middle, that's a diameter. Radius is going to be half of that. Any of these halfways are going to be the same. Well, if I need to want to figure out what half the diameter is, I would divide it by 2. Well, with a number like 7, I would just turn that into a fraction. 7 over 2. 7 divided by 2. Well, 7 divided by 2, 2 can go into 7 3 times. If I take 2 into 7 3 times, there will be 1 left over. My denominator here is 2, so my denominator there is 2. The radius would be 3.5 centimeters. All right, moving right along. Here I have the diameter is 36 meters. So once again, I would just divide. Now, this may not be as much mental math. So in this situation, if it was me, I would just go 2 into 36. Now, I know that this is an even number. It ends in 6, so I know it's going to work out evenly. 2 can go into 3 one time. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. I'm going to bring the 6 down. 2 can go into 16. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. So I know that 2 can go into 36 18 times, which means the radius, the distance from here to here, is 18 meters. All right, moving right along. Here I have a diameter of 5.5 inches. So here I would be taking 5.5, okay? And I would be dividing that by 2. Well, I'm going to first have to make everything a fraction. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So that would be 11 over 2. And I'm multiplying that, because division becomes multiplication. Since I'm dividing by 2 over 1, I'm multiplying it by 1 over 2. Fairly straightforward. 11 times 1 is 11. 2 times 2 is 4. 11 divided by 4. Well, 4 can go into 11. 2 times. If I take 4 into 11 2 times, there are 3 left over. My denominator here is 4. So my denominator here is 4. I get 2 and 3/4. All right, well, find the diameter now. Okay, so this is just the opposite. I'm finding the diameter. I know the radius. I know half the distance. In this situation, it's 8 inches. So I want to know this entire distance from top to bottom, or all the way across, going through the middle. So instead of taking the diameter and dividing it by 2, I'm going to take the radius and multiply it by 2. So when we think about radius, we can think of it in this formula, and this might be one to write down. I'm going to use R for radius. Radius equals D for diameter divided by 2. Half the distance is equal to the whole distance divided by 2. Well, find the diameter could be the exact opposite. Diameter equals 2 times the radius. Well, I know the radius in this first example is 8. So I'm going to do 8 times 2. Well, 8 times 2 is 16. So I know that the diameter is 16 inches. Well, this last one here, let me go ahead and finish off the circle. 5/7 centimeters. Well, I know that the radius is 5/7 centimeters, but I need to know the diameter. So I have to do 2 times the radius. So I know that it's going to be 2 over 1 times 5/7. I don't need to flip anything because it's just a multiplication. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 7 is 7. I get 10/7. Well, 7 can go into 10 one time. If I take 7 into 10 one time, there will be 3 left over. My denominator here is 7, so my denominator here is 7. I know that 1 3/7 is in simplest form. The only number that can go into both 3 and 7 is 1. All right, let's move right along. Find the circumference. Use 3.14 or 22/7 for pi. Well, pi, we use 3.14. If we want it as a fraction, it's going to be 22/7. I'm going to talk about that here momentarily. But for circumference, circumference is the distance around a circle. A lot of times we talk about perimeter, the distance around a polygon, like a triangle or a square or a pentagon or whatever, and we would add all the sides together. Well, we can also find the distance around a circle by using this formula. Circumference, which we'll use for C, equals pi times the diameter. And for pi, we're going to use either 3.14 or 22/7. 22/7 and 3.14 are not exactly the same thing. They're very close, but they are not exactly the same thing. And so if you were to actually go and use them, you would get an answer very close to each other, but you would not get the exact thing, same thing. Now, 22/7, pretty much I like to use 22/7 if we're dealing with fractions, first of all, because we just keep fractions, or if the number that we're using is a multiple of 7. Well, if I look at this first example, from the top to the middle, it's 14 centimeters. Now, this is just the radius. The formula for circumference is pi times diameter. So if I only know the radius, I have to go back to my original formula for finding the diameter. Remember that diameter equals 2 times the radius. Okay? So if my diameter is 14, to figure out, if my radius is 14, half the way across, to find the diameter, I'd have to do 14 times 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. I get 28. Okay? So far, so good. Now I know that my diameter is 28. Now, 28 is a multiple of 7. And so the reason why I like to use 22/7 in this circumstance is because if I do 22/7 and I multiply that by 28 over 1, I can cross-check with a 7 and 28. Well, 7 divided by 7 is 1. 28 divided by 7 is 4. And that becomes a much simpler multiplication problem. 22 times 4 is 88. 1 times 1 is 1. 88 over 1 equals 88. The circumference of this circle is 88 centimeters. Okay? 12 meters. Now here I know the diameter. 12 is not divisible by 7. It's not a fraction, so I'm just going to use 22 over, or I'm just going to use 3.14. So it's pi times diameter. Pi is 3.14. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in times 12, because it's pi times the diameter, which is 12. Well, 3.14 times 12, decimals don't have to be lined up. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Put the 0 down. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Now when I go ahead and add, 8 plus 0 is 8. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. Nothing plus 3 is 3. There are 1, 2 numbers that come after the decimal in the problem, so I need 1, 2 numbers after the decimal in the answer. 37.68 meters for the circumference for circle number 2. So that's the essential idea between radius, diameter, and circumference. All right, we'll talk to you later, 7th grade. Bye.